Floyd Mayweather's family has never really been far from drama, but this time it's different because it's coming from his own father. After the Netflix scandal started making waves, things inside the family reportedly shifted fast. What people didn't expect was Floyd Mayweather Sr. speaking out in a way that doesn't just defend his son, but questions parts of the story everyone thought was already settled. And the most shocking detail isn't what he said about the scandal itself. It's the specific moment he claims changed everything behind the scenes, the one Floyd has never publicly addressed. On February 23, 2026, Netflix made an announcement that sent shockwaves through the sports world. More than a decade after their record-breaking fight of the century, Floyd "Money" Mayweather Jr. and Manny Pacquiao were officially set to face off again. The rematch that boxing fans had discussed and debated for over 11 years was apparently on. And it was happening on the biggest digital stage on the planet. The longtime rivals would meet in a highly anticipated rematch on Saturday, September 19th, streaming live on Netflix from Sphere in Las Vegas, marking the first boxing match ever held at the groundbreaking venue. This was not some back-alley exhibition card. This was not a YouTube event. Netflix was positioning this as a genuine, sanctioned, professional boxing match between two of the most decorated fighters in the sport's history, and they were doing it inside the most technologically advanced entertainment venue on Earth. The announcement read like something out of a movie script. A rivalry reignited, a perfect venue, a global streaming audience, and two men in their late 40s, each with something left to prove, circling each other one more time. The numbers attached to their first meeting in 2015 still hold records. The first fight generated a record 4.6 million pay-per-view buys. The event also set a world record live gate of $72 million at the MGM Grand Garden Arena. That fight was the single biggest commercial event in boxing history, and Netflix saw an opportunity to take that cultural moment and amplify it through the reach of their streaming infrastructure. This time around, Netflix promised to make Mayweather-Pacquiao 2 a cultural event by streaming it live globally to its 325+ million subscribers at no additional cost. That is a staggering proposition. In 2015, casual fans had to shell out upwards of $100 for the pay-per-view. This time, if you already had a Netflix subscription, you were in. The barriers to access that defined the first bout were now completely stripped away, and the venue itself added to the spectacle. Instead of the MGM Grand, the bout would take place at the Sphere. The production will utilize the venue's advanced technologies to provide fans with an immersive experience unlike any other in boxing history. The imagery was potent. Two aging warriors settling a decade-old score beneath the glow of the most futuristic arena ever constructed. Manny Pacquiao, for his part, was not shy about what he wanted from this fight. Floyd and I gave the world what remains the biggest fight in boxing history. The fans have waited long enough. They deserve this rematch, and it will be even bigger now that it will be streamed live globally on Netflix. I want Floyd to live with the one loss on his professional record, and always remember who gave it to him. Those are not the words of a man coming back for an easy payday. Those are the words of a man looking for a reckoning. Pacquiao had remained professionally active in ways that Mayweather had not. Pacquiao had fought 8 more matches in the intervening 10 years. He most recently fought to a majority draw against Mario Barrios in July 2025. At 47 years old, Pacquiao was still engaging in real sanctioned fights against active ranked boxers. Whatever you thought about his age, his willingness to put himself on the line was never in question. Mayweather's response was characteristically terse. "I already fought and beat Manny once. This time will be the same result." That was it. No elaboration. No fire and brimstone trash talk, just a flat, clipped declaration of confidence. But what seemed like supreme self-assurance at the time would look very different in the weeks to follow. Netflix was not approaching this casually. Netflix called it a once-in-a-generation event, with Mayweather officially coming out of retirement for a professional rematch. The language was deliberate. Every word in that press release was chosen to communicate one thing. This was real. This was not an exhibition where two aging fighters touched gloves softly and danced around each other for 8 rounds. This was going on the record. The rematch was organized and would be produced by Everwonder Studio. Hidden Empire Film Group, and Limitless X Holdings. The event was being promoted by Manny Pacquiao Promotions and Mayweather Promotions, in partnership with CSI Sports and Fight Sports. The promotional apparatus behind this fight was sprawling. Multiple entities, multiple contracts, multiple agreements, each one designed to lock in the details so that the fight would happen as advertised. And this matters because when the wheels started coming off, contracts, signatures, advance payments, all of it would become the ammunition in one of the most dramatic disputes boxing has seen in years. The Netflix announcement landed during a period when the streaming giant was rapidly expanding into live combat sports. 2024 was highlighted by Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson, which drew 108 million live global viewers. To become the most streamed sporting event in history, Netflix's first boxing match. That fight, for all its criticisms, was an undeniable commercial juggernaut. Netflix had proven that it could command a global live audience for boxing, in a way that traditional pay-per-view networks could only dream of. This followed Anthony Joshua's knockout victory over Jake Paul in December, Terrence "Bud" Crawford's unanimous decision over Canelo Alvarez in September, and Taylor Serrano 3 in July, which was the most watched professional women's sporting event of 2025 in the US. Netflix was not just dabbling in boxing, they were systematically conquering it. Each event was bigger than the last. Each event brought in more subscribers, more eyeballs, more cultural conversation. And now, Mayweather-Pacquiao 2 was supposed to be the crown jewel. The biggest rivalry in boxing, the biggest streaming platform in entertainment, the biggest venue in Las Vegas. Everything was aligned for an event of monumental scale. Everything, that is, except one thing: Floyd Mayweather himself. 1 month after that splashy announcement, Floyd Mayweather appeared at a Las Vegas meet and greet. He was at the MCM retail store inside the Forum Shops at Caesar's Palace, meeting fans, signing autographs, doing what Floyd often does, being Floyd. But it was during this routine appearance that the entire foundation of the Netflix deal began to fracture. This is not actually a fight, it's an exhibition, so we're gonna do it again. And hopefully we're gonna entertain the people, the 49-year-old stated. He also cast doubt on the venue. The Sphere is one of the places that they talked about, so we don't know if it's 100% gonna be there. With those words, Mayweather contradicted two of the most significant elements of the Netflix announcement: the nature of the contest and the location. The implication was seismic. If the fight was merely an exhibition, then Mayweather's 50-0 record would not be on the line. The contest would not count on either fighter's professional ledger. It would be reduced from a defining rematch to an entertainment spectacle, one with far less at stake and far less reason for the average fan to care. The boxing world reacted with a mixture of confusion and frustration. Floyd Mayweather had cast serious doubt over some aspects of Netflix's blockbuster announcement of his rematch with Manny Pacquiao. Mayweather's latest comments directly contradicted two major elements of that announcement. This was not a subtle disagreement about the size of the ring or the number of rounds. This was the headliner publicly downgrading the main event of a globally hyped card. And it was not as though Mayweather made one passing comment. Mayweather gave several interviews in which he claimed the fight would be an exhibition, and that the location was still unknown. He repeated it. He doubled down. He went from interview to interview telling people that what Netflix had sold them was not what they were going to get. The question that immediately emerged was a simple one. Why? Why would Mayweather agree to a professional fight, allow Netflix to announce it to the entire world, and then turn around weeks later and try to change the terms? The answer, as it would turn out, had everything to do with fear, money, and a 50-0 record that Mayweather valued more than almost anything else in the world. Pacquiao's camp did not take this lying down. Jos Mathur, CEO of Manny Pacquiao Promotions, told ESPN, "As of right now, the fight is still on. There is no termination of any sort, and he has signed for a professional fight." And then Mathur delivered the line that would become the rallying cry of this entire saga. Floyd Mayweather is officially in breach of his contract. In the fight business, calling someone out for breach of contract is a legal escalation. It signals that lawyers are involved, that documents are being reviewed, and that the offended party is prepared to pursue remedies, financial or otherwise. And Mathur was not done. No one in these last 3 months has brought up anything related to the venue, or related to the fight not being a professional fight. The implication was clear. According to Pacquiao's team, there had been zero indication in months of negotiations, signings, and planning that Mayweather had any intention of turning this into an exhibition. It was only after the announcement was made, after the press releases were sent, after the marketing machine was in motion, that Mayweather decided to change the terms. What made the situation even more explosive was the money. Mathur revealed that Mayweather had received payments up front for all of his upcoming bouts, and even took an advance on his purse for the Pacquiao fight. Floyd signed 3 separate agreements across different dates with different parties. He received money for all of them, and he's also taken an advance on the Pacquiao fight. This was not a case of a fighter hesitating at the negotiating table. This was a fighter who had already collected cash and was now trying to rewrite the rules after pocketing the deposit. The optics were terrible, and the paper trail, according to Mathur, was ironclad. He signed all the contracts. We have the DocuSign proofs, as well as wet signatures with his device ID, with his IP address, with everything there. Boxing reporter Lance Pugmire of Boxing Scene corroborated the financial picture. According to Pugmire, Mayweather was paid millions of dollars in advance by Netflix for a pro fight before trying to turn it into an exhibition. Netflix has given Floyd Mayweather some financial advances, and we're talking millions of dollars. The scale of the advance was reportedly even higher than initial estimates. Pacquiao himself addressed the situation directly. Speaking on Inside the Ring, Pacquiao said he was blindsided by Mayweather's comments. Pacquiao said he believes Mayweather's comments came from a place of fear. "I called Jas right away. What happened? That's not what we signed. We signed a real fight." His frustration was palpable, but so was his certainty. In Pacquiao's mind, the deal was done. The contracts were signed, and Mayweather's attempt to backtrack was not a negotiation tactic. It was an act of desperation. The CEO of Manny Pacquiao Promotions issued a hard deadline for resolution. Jos Mathur said there was a hard deadline for Mayweather's team to commit to the original agreement. Floyd's signature is on multiple contracts. Professional fight. Netflix doesn't want to be involved in an exhibition. We don't want that to happen. The message to Mayweather was unambiguous. Honor the contract or face the legal consequences. As long as he's got smart people around him that can see the size of the opportunity, then they can make him a lot of money. More money than he's made in the last 5 years. That line, buried in the middle of the contractual back and forth, hinted at something deeper. A question about whether Floyd Mayweather truly had smart people around him anymore. And that question leads directly to one of the most significant aspects of this entire controversy: the people in Floyd's corner. There was a time when Floyd Mayweather's inner circle was a well-oiled machine. Advisors, trainers, managers, promoters, all of them operating in sync to guide one of the most marketable athletes in history. But that was a different era. Mayweather has already divorced from his career-long confidant, Leonard Ellerbay, is suing his former broadcaster Showtime Sports and Steven Espinoza, and even name-checked business partner Al Haymon for allegedly engaging in a fraudulent scheme to hide $340 million in earnings from him. And so it's unclear who in his inner circle today remains from the core, who helped him achieve all he did in the sport in the first place. This is a man who once had the tightest operation in boxing, a promotional machine that never lost a fight in the ring or in the boardroom. And now, in 2026, the machine has been dismantled. The confidantes are gone. The advisors are being sued, and the people who remain are apparently unable or unwilling to prevent Floyd from making decisions that are actively sabotaging his own business interests. And this is where Floyd's father enters the picture. Because when the institutions fail, when the advisors scatter, when the lawyers turn into adversaries, family is the last circle left. And in the Mayweather family, that last circle has always been a complicated place to stand. The Mayweather family is, and always has been, a boxing family. Floyd was born Floyd Joy Sinclair on February 24, 1977, in Grand Rapids, Michigan. He hailed from a boxing family. His father, Floyd Mayweather Sr., was a welterweight contender, and Uncle Roger Mayweather was a welterweight and lightweight champion, while another Uncle Jeff held the super featherweight title in the mid-1990s. Boxing was not a career choice in the Mayweather household. It was the family trade. It was in the blood, in the walls, in the air they breathed. Floyd Sr. was not just a father. He was also a fighter, a trainer, and eventually, one of the most important and controversial figures in his son's corner. He taught Floyd the fundamentals. He instilled the defensive brilliance that would become Floyd Jr.'s signature. And then life intervened, as it so often does in the Mayweather story, and the relationship between father and son became something far more complicated than any simple boxing narrative could contain. Understanding what Floyd Sr. said about the Netflix scandal requires understanding who Floyd Sr. is, not just as a boxing figure, but as a father. And that story begins in the streets of Grand Rapids, Michigan, in a household where drugs, violence, and boxing existed side by side. The story of Floyd Mayweather Jr.'s childhood is not a fairy tale. He grew up with a father who dealt drugs and a mother who was addicted to drugs. His father has served time for drug trafficking. Mayweather grew up a lot at his grandmother's, and she was the one who encouraged him to keep going as a boxer, telling him he would make it big. This was not a household with two loving parents guiding a prodigy toward greatness. This was a household in survival mode. His father often brought him to the gym for training, and other family members were boxers as well. So when his father went to jail, Mayweather's uncle helped train him. He dropped out of high school to become more serious about boxing. The gym became Floyd Jr.'s sanctuary. It was the one place where the chaos of his family life faded into the background, and the only thing that mattered was the work in front of him. His grandmother's belief in him was the anchor. His Uncle Roger's training gave him the tools, and his father's absence during the most formative years of his life created a void that Floyd would spend decades trying to fill, sometimes with money, sometimes with trophies, and sometimes with the kind of public bravado that made him one of the most polarizing athletes in the world. Floyd Mayweather Sr. eventually returned to his son's corner, but the relationship was never simple. Over the years, they have publicly fallen out and reconciled multiple times. Floyd Sr. has praised his son in one interview and criticized him in the next. He has demanded credit for Floyd Jr.'s success, insisting that his early training was the foundation of everything. And Floyd Jr. has acknowledged his father's contributions, while also making it clear that the distance between them was not something he chose. It was something his father's lifestyle forced upon him. This push and pull dynamic is essential context for understanding the bombshell. When Floyd Sr. speaks about his son, it is never a neutral act. There is always weight behind it. Decades of shared history, resentment, pride, and the kind of love that only exists between people who have hurt each other deeply and still cannot walk away. The boxing world knows Floyd Sr. as the man who helped create a genius, but the boxing world also knows Floyd Sr. as a man who, at various points, was replaced by Roger Mayweather in his son's corner, who was frozen out of fight camps, who showed up at press conferences uninvited, and who sometimes seemed to view his son's career through the lens of his own unfulfilled ambitions. With that backdrop in mind, when Floyd's father decided to speak on the Netflix scandal, it carried a different kind of weight. This was not a random commentator on a podcast. This was not a retired fighter sharing his opinion on Twitter. This was the man who first put boxing gloves on Floyd Mayweather Jr.'s hands, the man who shaped the fighter, who abandoned the boy, who came back to the man, and who has never stopped having something to say about both. The scandal itself is complicated enough. Contracts, breach allegations, millions in advance payments, a streaming giant caught in the middle, a Filipino icon demanding accountability, an American legend seemingly trying to escape the very deal he signed. Each layer of the story reveals new questions about Floyd's motivations, his financial reality, and his willingness to protect his legacy at all costs. But when your own father, the man whose DNA runs through your veins, whose training runs through your footwork, whose absence runs through your psychology, when that man stands in front of a camera and drops a bomb on you in the middle of all of this, that's a different kind of problem. The sports media cycle is relentless, and the Mayweather Netflix story became one of the biggest narratives in boxing almost overnight. Every day brought a new revelation. Pacquiao's camp releasing more details, boxing journalists digging into the financial trail, Netflix reportedly exploring legal options, and Floyd Mayweather, the man who made a career out of controlling every narrative, suddenly unable to control any of them. The will they, won't they nature of the saga echoed the tortured negotiations that preceded the first fight in 2015. Given how notoriously difficult it was to make their first fight, which took years of failed negotiations, public back and forth, and constant roadblocks, before finally coming together in 2015, any kind of rematch was always going to come with a level of caution. History was repeating itself. But this time, the dynamics were different. This time, it was not two negotiating camps struggling to find middle ground. This time, one camp was saying the deal was done, and the other was trying to rewrite it. Given the growing tension and conflicting statements, it's fair to wonder if history is repeating itself in more ways than one. And standing in the middle of all of this, watching his son navigate a crisis of his own creation, was Floyd Mayweather Sr., a man who, as we are about to see, had some thoughts of his own. What made the Netflix situation so unusual was not just the breach of contract. It was the public nature of Floyd's retreat. Fighters change terms behind closed doors all the time. Negotiations collapse and restart. Venues shift. Purses get renegotiated. That is the normal rhythm of the fight business. But what Mayweather did was different. He went on camera, in front of fans and media, and publicly contradicted the announcement that Netflix had made just weeks earlier. Floyd Mayweather Jr. made an extraordinary misstep when he downgraded the stakes of September's long-awaited Manny Pacquiao rematch by claiming the Netflix-bound do-over is actually an exhibition and not a fully sanctioned fight after all. Calling it a misstep may even be generous. In the world of sports business, publicly undermining your own deal while your business partner is spending millions on marketing is closer to self-sabotage, and the motive, according to multiple insiders, was transparent. If there were some from those days who are still close to him, maybe they'd say something similar. And maybe that's why Mayweather is now having second thoughts about putting his coveted 50-0 record on the line, in what others, who have been close to him, have said is a losing battle from the off. The 50-0 record. That number, etched into Mayweather's identity, was the reason he was running. And everybody knew it. Pacquiao's team had intelligence that supported the fear theory. It is also not lost on observers that, when first speaking with people involved with Mayweather and Pacquiao, one source who worked frequently with Floyd told them straight up that he'd lose to Manny. Mayweather would lose to Pacquiao in his current form, the source said, and it wouldn't be close. That is a devastating assessment from someone inside Floyd's own orbit. Not a Pacquiao loyalist, not a media pundit, someone who had worked with Floyd and who understood his current physical state. The math was simple. Pacquiao had fought professionally. As recently as 2025, Mayweather had not fought a sanctioned professional bout since 2017. Mayweather has not fought professionally since he defeated MMA star Conor McGregor by TKO in 2017. He has fought several exhibition matches since then, including those against Logan Paul and John Gotti III, among others. Almost 9 years had passed since Floyd's last professional contest, and in that time, the gap between exhibition fitness and professional fight fitness had widened into a canyon. If Pacquiao beat Mayweather in a sanctioned bout, the 50-0 record would become 50-1. And for Floyd Mayweather, the man who built his entire post-career identity on being undefeated, that would be a fate worse than losing the fight itself. So why did he sign the contracts in the first place? This is the question that lingered over the entire scandal. If Mayweather was afraid of losing, why did he put his name on the dotted line? Why did he accept the advance money? Why did he allow Netflix to announce the fight to the world? The answer, based on the evidence, comes down to money. A lengthy Business Insider investigation alleged that Mayweather was heavily leveraged, taking out high-interest loans against his real estate, facing foreclosures, and dealing with a growing list of unpaid bills. The money brand, it appeared, was running low on actual money. And when Netflix came calling with a massive payday, the temptation to sign was too great to resist, even if the terms of the deal were terrifying. But there is a difference between signing a contract and fighting under its terms. And Floyd Mayweather, who had spent a lifetime mastering the art of defensive movement, seemed to believe he could sign, collect, and then maneuver his way into a softer version of the deal. What he did not anticipate was that the other side, Pacquiao's camp, Netflix, the media, and ultimately his own father, would not let him get away with it. The exhibition argument was never going to fly, and Mayweather should have known that. At an exhibition against British reality show star and MMA veteran Aaron Chalmers in 2023, London's O2 Arena was described as a ghost town, as the contest played out in a mostly empty arena, with thousands of unsold tickets and last-minute price reductions to 5 failing pounds to even tempt bargain hunters. The exhibition market was drying up. Fans had grown tired of watching Mayweather go through the motions against opponents who posed no threat. Mayweather's exhibition run over the past several years had delivered only mixed results. At a time in which Netflix only wants surefire hits, Netflix was not going to invest tens of millions of dollars, possibly hundreds of millions when production costs and purses were factored in, for an exhibition. They wanted a professional fight. They wanted the 50-0 record on the line. They wanted the stakes that would draw 100 million viewers to their platform. And Pacquiao's team delivered the punchline with surgical precision. Jasmather told the press, "Men lie, women lie, executed binding agreements don't." In one sentence, the CEO of Manny Pacquiao Promotions managed to encapsulate the entire dispute. The contracts existed, the signatures existed, the advance money had been received, and no amount of Floyd's verbal gymnastics was going to change what was written on paper. The story was now careening toward a collision. On one side, Pacquiao and Netflix, armed with contracts and receipts. On the other, Mayweather, armed with nothing but his desire to protect a number, and watching from the sidelines. Commenting when no one expected him to, was Floyd Mayweather Sr., the ghost in the machine of his son's career. The boxing community was split. Some sided with Floyd, arguing that no fighter should be forced into a professional fight against his will. Others sided with Pacquiao, pointing out that Mayweather voluntarily signed the contracts and took the money. And still others shook their heads at the entire spectacle, lamenting the decline of a sport that once prided itself on honoring the code of combat. But what made this different from every other boxing dispute was the family dimension. Floyd's father speaking out was not just another media moment. It was a father publicly addressing his son's behavior at the lowest point of his professional credibility, and that, as we are about to explore, changed the dynamics of this story in ways that nobody, least of all Floyd Mayweather Jr., saw coming. To understand what Floyd Mayweather Sr. dropping a bombshell on his own son really means, you first have to understand the depths of the Mayweather family story. It is a story that begins not in the bright lights of the Las Vegas Strip, but in a cramped, impoverished house in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where a young boy named Floyd Joy Sinclair grew up, surrounded by the dual intoxications of boxing glory and street-level narcotics. The father, Floyd Sr., was a welterweight contender with legitimate talent, a man who stepped into the ring with legendary fighters and held his own. But outside the ring, his choices were devastating. Floyd Mayweather Sr. was a welterweight contender, and Uncle Roger Mayweather was a welterweight and lightweight champion, while another Uncle Jeff held the super featherweight title in the mid-1990s. The family had boxing embedded into its very identity. Floyd Jr. did not discover boxing the way some kids discover soccer or basketball. Boxing discovered him. It was there when he woke up. It was there when he fell asleep. The gym was the living room, and the ring was the dinner table. Floyd Sr.'s own career was marked by moments of genuine promise. He fought Sugar Ray Leonard in 1978, losing by decision but earning respect for his toughness and skill. He was never a world champion, but he was far more than a journeyman. The boxing IQ that Floyd Jr. would later be celebrated for, the angles, the footwork, the ability to read an opponent's intentions before they even knew what they were doing. Much of that was seeded by his father. But for all of his boxing knowledge, Floyd Sr. was not equipped to be the kind of father that Floyd Jr. needed. He grew up with a father who dealt drugs and a mother who was addicted to drugs. His father served time for drug trafficking. Mayweather grew up a lot at his grandmother's, and she was the one who encouraged him to keep going as a boxer, telling him he would make it big. Grand Rapids in the 1980s was not a forgiving place for a child in those circumstances. Poverty, instability, and the constant threat of violence defined Floyd Jr.'s early years. There is a story that Floyd has told multiple times over the years about a day when he was a child, and his father was holding him in his arms. Someone came to the door with a gun. Floyd Sr. used his own infant son as a shield, holding the child in front of him while negotiating with the armed man. Whether every detail of this story is precisely as Floyd remembers it is, of course, debatable, but the emotional truth of it is undeniable. Floyd Jr. grew up feeling that his father prioritized his own survival over his son's safety. This is not the kind of wound that heals easily, and for Floyd Jr., it never fully did. Even as he rose to the pinnacle of boxing, even as he earned hundreds of millions of dollars, even as he surrounded himself with an entourage the size of a small army, the absence of a reliable father was a wound that kept reopening. And Floyd Sr., for his part, seemed to oscillate between remorse and defiance, sometimes acknowledging his failures and other times claiming credit for the very success that his absence nearly prevented. When Floyd Sr. went to prison, it was his uncle Roger Mayweather who stepped into the trainer's role. Eventually, Floyd dropped out of Ottawa Hills High School and focused his attention on boxing. Under the tutelage of his uncle Roger, he amassed an amateur record of 84-8 and 3 Golden Gloves championships. Roger was, in many ways, the anti-Floyd Sir. He was a world champion in his own right, a fighter who had been at the top of the sport and who understood the discipline required to get there. Roger did not deal drugs. Roger did not bring chaos into the gym. Roger was structure. Roger was work. Under Roger's guidance, Floyd Jr. became an elite amateur. His defensive brilliance, his speed, his timing, all of it was sharpened under Roger's eye. In 1996, he captured the bronze in the featherweight division at the Summer Olympics, a controversial decision marred by accusations of intimidation by various judges. That prompted the U.S. team to protest the ruling. Floyd felt he had been robbed of gold. The injustice of that decision fueled a fire that would burn for decades. When Floyd turned professional later that year, the question of who would be in his corner became a source of family tension. Floyd Sr. wanted back in. Roger had been the one doing the work, and Floyd Jr. was caught between loyalty to the father who gave him his genes and gratitude to the uncle who gave him his skills. This tug-of-war would persist, in one form or another, for the entirety of Floyd's career. Floyd Sr.'s return to his son's corner was neither smooth nor permanent. When he came out of prison, he re-established himself as a trainer, not just for Floyd Jr., but for other fighters as well. He worked with Oscar De La Hoya during Oscar's preparation for the fight against Floyd Jr. in 2007, which created one of the most dramatic scenarios in modern boxing. A father training his son's opponent. The decision, whether motivated by money, pride, or spite, exposed the fractures in the Mayweather family for the entire world to see. Floyd Jr. won that fight by split decision, and afterward, the dynamic between father and son was frostier than ever. For Floyd Jr., the betrayal was not just personal, it was professional. His father had taken the knowledge of his techniques, his tendencies, his weaknesses, and handed it to the man standing across from him in the ring. In boxing, that is not simply bad parenting. It is an act of war. Over the years that followed, Floyd Sr. and Floyd Jr. engaged in a public cycle of estrangement and reconciliation that played out like a soap opera. One month, Floyd Sr. was in the gym working the mitts with his son. The next month, he was doing interviews questioning Floyd's choice of opponents. The month after that, he was frozen out of the training camp entirely. And then, inevitably, there would be a public embrace, a declaration of family unity, and the cycle would start all over again. Roger Mayweather's death in 2020 removed the buffer that had long existed in the family dynamic. Roger was the mediator, the bridge between Floyd Sr.'s volatility and Floyd Jr.'s stubbornness. When Roger was alive, there was always someone who could step in and de-escalate the tension. When Roger died, that safety net disappeared. Floyd Jr. mourned his uncle publicly and deeply. Roger had been more than a trainer. He had been a surrogate father, a mentor, and the one person in the family who could get Floyd to listen without raising his voice. Without Roger, the relationship between Floyd Jr. and Floyd Sr. became even more unmoored. There was no one left who had the credibility and the emotional standing to tell both men to calm down and focus. This is the relational backdrop against which Floyd Sr.'s bombshell comments must be understood. He was not speaking from a position of a trusted advisor who had been in the room during the Netflix negotiations. He was speaking as a father who had been on the outside of his son's inner circle for years, watching from a distance as the empire he helped build began showing cracks. Floyd Sr. has never been short of opinions about his son's career. His father, Floyd Mayweather Sr., is confident that money can still beat Pacquiao and McGregor. In interviews over the years, he has alternated between praising Floyd Jr.'s brilliance and taking credit for it. He has consistently argued that Floyd Jr.'s defensive style, the shoulder roll, the pull counter, the angled movement, was his invention, his creation, and that everything Floyd became in the ring was a product of his teaching. Mayweather Sr. was asked whether his son could beat Pacquiao and McGregor at the same time, to which he replied, "I am telling you right here, Floyd can whoop Pacquiao and then turn right back around. Give him about 3-round rest. Then he'll come back and get Conor. And I'm telling you, both of them are going to sleep." That is Floyd Sr. in a nutshell. Hyperbolic, defiant, unwavering in his belief in the Mayweather bloodline, and completely uninterested in the constraints of reality. But that was before the Netflix scandal. That was before the breach of contract. That was before the financial revelations. And that was before Floyd Sr. looked at the situation and decided that his son needed to hear something he did not want to hear. The timing of Floyd Sr.'s intervention could not have been more loaded. It came at a moment when Floyd Jr.'s credibility was under siege from every direction. Pacquiao's camp was calling him a contract breaker. Netflix was reportedly furious. The IRS was knocking on his door. And the broader boxing community was openly questioning whether the man who called himself Money actually had any money left. Into this pressure cooker walked Floyd Mayweather Sr., a man with no filter, no publicist, and no apparent interest in protecting his son's feelings. Floyd Sr. has always operated on his own frequency. He says what he wants, when he wants, to whoever will listen. And in the middle of his son's most significant professional crisis since retirement, that frequency was tuned to maximum volume. The boxing media naturally was riveted. A father-son drama within the context of a multi-million-dollar contract dispute was irresistible content, and Floyd Sr., who has never met a camera he didn't want to talk to, was more than willing to oblige. Floyd Sr.'s relationship with the truth has always been fluid. He exaggerates, he contradicts himself, he makes claims that no one can verify, and then dares you to prove him wrong. But underneath the bluster, there is usually a kernel of something genuine, an observation about his son that, however clumsily expressed, reveals something that the broader public might not know. When Floyd Sr. spoke about the Netflix situation, the boxing world leaned in. Because for all his eccentricities, Floyd Sr. still knows boxing better than almost anyone alive. He trained world champions. He went rounds with Sugar Ray Leonard. He raised a fighter who retired 50-0. Whatever his failures as a father, his boxing knowledge has never been in question. And that knowledge is precisely what made his comments about the Netflix scandal so significant. Floyd Sr. was not just offering an opinion about contracts and business deals. He was offering a reading of his son's physical and mental state. A reading informed by decades of watching Floyd Jr. train, fight, and navigate the psychological warfare that defines elite boxing. And that reading, as it turned out, contained some truths that Floyd Jr. probably wished his father had kept to himself. The broader Mayweather family saga also includes the complicated question of money and support. Floyd Jr. has been generous with his family at times, buying houses, cars, and providing financial support. But he has also been controlling, using his wealth as a tool to maintain power dynamics within the family. Floyd Sr. has spoken publicly about financial disagreements, about being cut off, about not receiving what he believes he is owed for his contributions to his son's career. These financial tensions mirror the broader pattern that the Netflix scandal has exposed. Floyd Jr.'s relationship with money, earning it, spending it, owing it, fighting over it, is the central thread that runs through almost every chapter of his life. From the $22 million IRS lien after the first Pacquiao fight, to the current $7.3 million lien from the unpaid jewelry bills to the defaulted loans, the pattern is consistent. Floyd earns enormous sums, spends them as fast as they come in, and then finds himself scrambling for the next payday to stay afloat. Floyd Sr. has watched this pattern from the outside for years, and at some point, watching his son take advance money for a fight, he seemed determined not to honor. Floyd Sr. apparently decided that enough was enough. The father-son dynamic in boxing is unlike any other sport. In football or basketball, your father might coach your youth team. In boxing, your father might literally save your life, or fail to. The stakes in the ring are primal, and when a father has both trained a fighter and failed that fighter in fundamental ways, the relationship carries a weight that words struggle to capture. Floyd Jr. has spoken about his father with a mixture of respect and resentment that has remained remarkably consistent over the years. He credits Floyd Sr. for the technical foundation. He resents Floyd Sr. for the absences, the betrayals, and the chaos. And he has spent his entire adult life trying to prove that he transcended his upbringing, that the poverty, the drugs, the instability could not define him. But the Netflix scandal has a way of stripping away the armor. When the contracts are in dispute, when the IRS is filing liens, when the jewelers are suing, and when the entire boxing world is questioning your integrity, the armor of the money persona starts to feel very thin. And in that vulnerability, the voice of a father, even a flawed, complicated, sometimes infuriating father, carries a different kind of power. Floyd Sr.'s willingness to speak publicly about his son's situation reflects a pattern that is well established in the Mayweather family. They air their grievances in front of cameras. They resolve their disputes in the media. They use public platforms to communicate things that most families would discuss behind closed doors. It is dysfunctional, yes, but it is also authentically them. What sets this particular intervention apart is the context. Floyd Sr. is not complaining about being excluded from a training camp. He is not demanding credit for a victory. He is addressing a crisis that threatens not just Floyd Jr.'s reputation, but his financial future, his legal standing, and potentially his freedom. If the breach of contract allegations lead to litigation, and all signs suggest they might, the financial consequences could be catastrophic. And Floyd Sr., for all his faults, is a father, and fathers, even the ones who held you in front of a gun when you were a baby, sometimes say the things that nobody else has the standing to say, because the bond between parent and child is not rational. It is not transactional. It survives betrayal, prison, estrangement, and decades of mutual disappointment. And sometimes, in the middle of a crisis, that irrational, indestructible bond produces a moment of raw honesty that cuts through everything else. The Mayweather family's public battles have always been boxing's version of reality television. Every dispute, every reconciliation, every cutting remark has played out in full view of fans, reporters, and social media commentators. The family has never had the luxury of privacy, partly because of the sport's inherently public nature, and partly because the Mayweathers themselves have never seemed to want privacy. Floyd Jr., in particular, has built his brand on transparency. He shows the money, he shows the cars, he shows the women, he shows the gambling. Every aspect of his life is curated for public consumption, designed to reinforce the image of invincibility and excess that has defined his persona since he first started calling himself Money. But curated transparency is not the same as genuine honesty. And the Netflix scandal has revealed that behind the velvet curtain, things are not as polished as the Instagram feed suggests. Floyd Sr. stepping into the conversation forces a different kind of transparency, one that Floyd Jr. cannot control. When your father speaks, you cannot spin it. You cannot have your publicist issue a clarification. You cannot dismiss it the way you would dismiss a random commentator. When your father speaks, the world listens differently. And Floyd Jr. knows this, which is why the comments from his father landed with such force. The boxing community's reaction to the father-son dynamic added fuel to the fire. Social media erupted with takes, hot and cold, about whether Floyd Sr. was being courageous or disloyal. Some praised him for being honest when everyone else in Floyd Jr.'s circle was apparently too afraid to tell the truth. Others criticized him for airing family business during his son's most vulnerable moment. The truth, as usual, is somewhere in between. Floyd Sr.'s motivations are never entirely pure. He seeks attention. He craves relevance. He wants the world to remember that Floyd Jr. did not build himself from nothing, that there was a man before the myth, a trainer before the championships, a father before the fame. And if inserting himself into the Netflix scandal is the price of that relevance, Floyd Sr. has shown repeatedly that he is willing to pay it. But there is also something undeniably powerful about a father, looking at his son's self-destructive behavior and deciding to say something about it, even if the forum is a camera, even if the audience is millions of people, even if the words land like punches. Because sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who can see most clearly what you refuse to see yourself. The generational nature of the Mayweather story also adds depth to the bombshell. Floyd Sr. fought in an era when fighters did not have the luxury of exhibitions. They fought for real every time, against whoever was put in front of them. The idea of signing for a professional fight and then trying to convert it into a meaningless exhibition would have been foreign to his generation. In Floyd Sr.'s world, you fought or you didn't. There was no middle ground. So when Floyd Sr. addressed his son's attempt to dodge the professional terms of the Pacquiao deal, there was an undercurrent of generational judgment in his words. The message was not just honor your contract. It was be a fighter. It was a challenge to his son's courage, his manhood, and his legacy, coming from the one person who had the unique authority to make that challenge. This is what made the bombshell more than just a media moment. It was a father holding a mirror up to his son and asking, "Who are you? Are you the 50-0 champion who beat everyone they put in front of you? Or are you the man who took the money and ran?" Floyd Sr.'s boxing philosophy has always been rooted in a certain kind of fearlessness. He fought Sugar Ray Leonard, one of the greatest boxers of all time, and he did not back down. He may not have won, but he showed up. He put his chin out there. He took the risk, and for a man who valued that kind of courage, watching his son avoid a fight that the whole world wanted to see must have been deeply frustrating. The irony is layered. Floyd Jr. has built his entire legacy on the claim that he never ducked anyone. He fought Oscar de la Hoya. He fought Manny Pacquiao. He fought Canelo Alvarez. He fought Shane Mosley. The list of Hall of Famers on his resume is longer than most fighters' entire records. But here, at the tail end of his career, the narrative was shifting. The man who said he never ducked was now, in the eyes of many, ducking. Floyd Sr. saw this narrative forming, and he saw its implications for the family name. The Mayweather name in boxing means something. It means toughness. It means skill. It means showing up. And if Floyd Jr.'s final chapter was defined by running from a fight he had already signed for, that stain would extend beyond Floyd Jr. himself. It would touch the entire family legacy. The question of legacy is central to understanding why Floyd Sr. spoke up. For Floyd Sr., the Mayweather legacy in boxing is not just about his son. It is about himself. It is about Roger. It is about Jeff. It is about the family name that was built in the gyms of Grand Rapids and carried to the brightest stages in the sport. When Floyd Jr. acts in a way that diminishes that legacy, Floyd Sr. takes it personally because it is personal. This is not an abstract concern for Floyd Sr. He dedicated his life to boxing. He sacrificed his body, his freedom, and many of his personal relationships in service of the sport. And the greatest validation of all those sacrifices is the career of Floyd Mayweather Jr., a career that is, in Floyd Sr.'s mind, directly attributable to the lessons he taught his son in those early years in Michigan. So when Floyd Jr. signs a contract, takes the money, and then tries to weasel out of a real fight, Floyd Sr. does not see a businessman making a savvy play. He sees a betrayal of the family code. He sees his son choosing money over honor, comfort over courage, and survival over the legacy that generations of Mayweathers fought to build. There is also a practical dimension to Floyd Sr.'s intervention. Floyd Sr. is not wealthy. He lives a comfortable life, but he does not have the kind of money that Floyd Jr. has or had. If Floyd Jr.'s financial situation continues to deteriorate, if the lawsuits pile up, if the IRS seizes assets, the ripple effects could extend to the broader family. Floyd Sr. has a vested interest in his son's financial stability, not just emotionally, but practically. The Netflix deal, if honored in its original terms, would generate enormous revenue. It would provide Floyd Jr. with the kind of liquidity that could address his IRS problems, settle his outstanding lawsuits, and stabilize his financial position. Turning the fight into an exhibition, which would pay significantly less and generate significantly less interest, would be a step in the wrong direction financially. Floyd Sr. understands economics in the way that a man who grew up with nothing understands them. You do not leave money on the table. You do not walk away from a deal that could change your life. And you certainly do not take someone's advance and then refuse to deliver what you promised. The emotional resonance of Floyd Sr.'s comments extended far beyond the boxing world. On social media, the story was shared not just by fight fans, but by people who connected with the universal themes at play: a father's disappointment, a son's stubbornness, the collision between pride and self-preservation. These are not boxing-specific themes. These are human themes, and the Mayweather family, for all its dysfunction. The comments section beneath every article and video about the bombshell was filled with people sharing their own stories of family conflict, of fathers and sons struggling to communicate, of moments when tough love crossed the line into public humiliation. Floyd Sr. and Floyd Jr. became, for a moment, a Rorschach test for the public's own family experiences. And that is perhaps the most telling aspect of the entire episode. Floyd Mayweather Jr. is one of the most famous, most successful, and most financially accomplished athletes in the history of sport. And yet, in the face of his father's words, he was reduced to something much simpler: a son hearing something from his father that he did not want to hear. As the dust settled on the initial shockwave of Floyd Sr.'s comments, the conversation turned to what would happen next. Would Floyd Jr. respond publicly? Would he ignore it? Would the father-son rift deepen? Or would it catalyze a reconciliation? The boxing world watched and waited, understanding that the answer to these questions would have implications not just for the Mayweather family, but for the Netflix deal, the Pacquiao rematch, and the broader trajectory of Floyd Jr.'s post-retirement life. The Netflix scandal had already tested Floyd Jr.'s relationships with his business partners, his legal team, and the streaming giant. Now, with his father's bombshell, the scandal was testing the most fundamental relationship of all, the one between a father and a son. And while the boxing world was consumed by the drama, the underlying financial reality of Floyd Mayweather Jr.'s life continued to worsen. The IRS lien was still outstanding, the lawsuits were still active, and the clock was ticking on the biggest deal of his post-retirement career. The nickname tells you everything. Floyd Money Mayweather did not choose that name because it sounded cool. He chose it because money was the axis around which his entire identity revolved. The cars, the jets, the cash-filled backpacks, the diamond-encrusted watches, every element of his public persona was designed to communicate a single, unmistakable message: I am wealthy beyond your comprehension, and I will never stop showing you. It was performance art, but it was also something deeper. A defense mechanism built by a boy who grew up with nothing, who watched his parents succumb to drugs, and who swore he would never be poor again. But in 2026, the money persona is colliding violently with financial reality, and the collision is happening in public, in courtrooms, in IRS filings, and in the media's relentless spotlight. The man who once paraded through Las Vegas with suitcases full of $100 bills is now battling to keep his own financial house from collapsing. The Netflix scandal did not create Floyd Mayweather's money problems, but it exposed them in a way that nothing else could have. When you sign a contract for a professional fight, take an advance, and then try to change the terms, the world does not see a strategic negotiator. The world sees a man who needed the money badly enough to sign, but who is now too afraid of the consequences to follow through. The IRS has been a recurring character in Floyd Mayweather's financial story for over 2 decades. After his massive payday against Manny Pacquiao in 2015, the IRS filed a lien for unpaid taxes. Mayweather argued his wealth was illiquid and eventually paid using his 2017 Conor McGregor fight purse. That first lien was for $22.2 million. The solution was simple in concept, if extraordinary in scale. Fight again, get paid again, and use the purse to settle the tax bill. From 2001 through 2015, Mayweather faced liens totaling tens of millions, including $6.17 million in 2007, $7.2 million in 2010, and others. He typically paid only after liens were filed. This is not a pattern of financial mismanagement. This is a pattern of intentional delay, a strategy of spending freely, deferring tax obligations, and then using the next fight to clean up the mess. It works, but only as long as there is always a next fight. A common thread throughout, Mayweather's team frequently cites illiquid assets, real estate, investments, luxury items. Despite his enormous earnings, he often requests payment extensions until a liquidity event, usually a major fight purse, arrives. The problem, of course, is that the liquidity events have been getting smaller and further apart. Exhibition fights against Logan Paul or John Gotti III do not generate the kind of revenue that championship bouts against Pacquiao or McGregor once did. And now, in 2026, the IRS was back again. The IRS filed a $7.3 million tax lien against Mayweather in Las Vegas, covering unpaid federal taxes from 2018 and 2023. The lien was filed in Las Vegas, where Mayweather owns multiple properties, specifically targeting unpaid taxes from the years 2018 and 2023. Public records indicated that the $7.3 million balance was still unpaid as of March 26th. The timing was brutal. Here was a man negotiating a 9-figure deal with Netflix, while simultaneously owing the federal government $7.3 million from tax years that were 5 and 3 years old. A tax lien is essentially the government's legal claim against your property. When you neglect or fail to pay a tax debt, it protects the government's interest in all your property, including real estate, personal property, and financial assets. For a man who owns multiple properties in Las Vegas and who has spent decades accumulating luxury assets, a federal tax lien is not an abstract concern. It is a legal cloud that hangs over everything he owns. Mayweather famously owed the IRS $22.2 million for his 2015 taxes, the year he fought Manny Pacquiao and made roughly $250 million. The cycle was depressingly familiar. Earn a fortune, spend most of it. Owe the government a staggering sum. Fight again to pay it off. Repeat, but the cycle only works if the fights keep coming and the purses keep growing. And in 2026, both of those assumptions were under serious threat. The IRS lien was not the only financial problem. Earlier in 2026, Mayweather was sued for nearly $338,000 in allegedly unpaid rent for a Manhattan duplex at the Baccarat Hotel and Residences. The apartment reportedly cost $100,000 per month. Layla Sentner, one of the property owners, said she spoke with Mayweather after months of missed payments. He was surprised, she told Business Insider. He had no idea he was that far behind. That last detail, he had no idea he was that far behind, is perhaps the most revealing sentence in the entire saga. A man who spent decades meticulously controlling every aspect of his boxing career apparently had so little control over his personal finances that he did not realize he was behind on his own rent. Whether that reflects genuine ignorance, deliberate delegation to an incompetent team, or something else entirely is an open question. But the image it creates is devastating. AJ's jewelry alleges that the boxer left with luxury watches and gold chains worth roughly $1.675 million, but paid only $300,000. Another jeweler, Leonard Suleimanoff, sued Mayweather and associate Jonah Rechnitz over an alleged unpaid settlement tied to nearly $3.9 million in jewelry. The lawsuits were piling up, And the pattern was the same in every case. Floyd acquired expensive things, made partial payments, and then stopped paying. The Business Insider investigation that dropped earlier in 2026 painted an even grimmer picture. The investigation alleged that Mayweather was heavily leveraged, taking out high-interest loans against his real estate, facing foreclosures, and dealing with a growing list of unpaid bills. Heavily leveraged is the kind of phrase that financial analysts use. Mayweather forcefully denied the claims and is actively suing the publication and one of its reporters for defamation. That is a strong response, but it is also the response of a man who has no other good options. If the allegations are true, admitting them would be catastrophic for his brand. If they are false, suing is the appropriate remedy. Either way, the lawsuit ensures that the question of Mayweather's true financial state will be litigated in court. Weeks later, Floyd went on the offensive, filing an explosive $340 million lawsuit against Showtime Networks. In that complaint, Mayweather alleged he wasn't experiencing financial strain due to his own spending, but rather because hundreds of millions of dollars from his career earnings had been secretly diverted into third-party accounts by his former manager, Al Heyman. If that allegation is true, it would be one of the biggest financial fraud cases in the history of sports. If it is not true, it raises even more uncomfortable questions about why Floyd is suing the people who made him rich. The celebrity net worth assessment of Mayweather's financial trajectory is striking. At his peak, Celebrity Net Worth estimated Floyd Mayweather's net worth at $500 million. That number was based on the assumption that he actually received the money he earned. Today, they estimate his net worth at $100 million, but acknowledge it's very hard to feel confident about that number. A decline from $500 million to $100 million is not a correction. It is a collapse. With all these lawsuits, liens, and allegations, Floyd also continues to project a billionaire's lifestyle, regularly posting photos of himself on private jets surrounded by bricks of cash. But at the same time, the sheer volume of financial smoke over the last few months suggests something concerning is at play. At the very least, he may have a liquid cash flow situation. And if that's true, it explains why he is suddenly stepping back into the ring nearly a decade after his official retirement. The private jets and the cash stacks might be real, but real and sustainable are two very different things. This is the context that makes the Netflix scandal so much more than a contract dispute. If Mayweather's financial situation is as precarious as the evidence suggests, then the Pacquiao rematch is not a choice. It is a necessity. He needs the money. He needs the payday. He needs the liquidity event that will allow him to settle the IRS, pay the jewelers, cover the rent, and keep the money brand alive for another cycle. And yet, knowing all of this, Mayweather still tried to change the terms. That is the part that defies easy explanation. If you need the money, and the money is contingent on a professional fight, why would you try to convert it into an exhibition that pays less and generates less interest? The answer, of course, is the 50-0 record. And the answer to why the 50-0 record matters more to Floyd than financial stability is something that goes deeper than business. It goes to identity. Floyd Mayweather is not a businessman who happens to box. He is a boxer who happens to do business. And in boxing, your record is your resume, your legacy, and your gravestone. A perfect record, 50 fights, 50 wins, 0 losses, is not just rare, it is sacred. Only one other fighter in the modern era, Rocky Marciano, retired with a perfect record, and Marciano did it with 49 wins. Floyd surpassed that number and has protected it with a ferocity that borders on obsession. If Manny Pacquiao at age 47 were to beat Floyd Mayweather in a sanctioned professional fight, the 50-0 record would be gone forever. And with it would go the single most important asset Floyd owns, more important than any house, any car, or any bank account. Because houses can be rebuilt and cars can be replaced. But a perfect record, once lost, is gone. The financial pressure was not coming from just one direction. A lawsuit filed in February alleged that Mayweather and his associate defaulted on a loan by failing to make a $900,000 payment. Court records did not show any legal counsel for the defendants in that case. The absence of legal representation in a $900,000 case is, by itself, a red flag. Either Mayweather is choosing not to defend himself, or his legal resources are stretched so thin that he cannot mount a defense in every case simultaneously. According to the complaint, Mayweather is one of the highest-paid athletes of all time, and more recently he had been named a defendant in at least 4 lawsuits, including an alleged breach of a settlement agreement with a luxury auto dealer, 2 cases involving Miami jewelers, and an accusation of owing nearly $338,000 in unpaid rent for a high-rise apartment in Manhattan, 4 active lawsuits, an IRS lien, a defamation suit against Business Insider, and a $340 million suit against Showtime. That is an extraordinary amount of legal activity for a retired athlete. The total exposure, factoring in the lawsuits, the IRS, and the potential contractual penalties from the Netflix situation, could theoretically reach into the hundreds of millions. And while Mayweather's legal team has consistently denied that he is experiencing financial strain, the volume and frequency of these disputes tell their own story. Floyd's spending habits have been a subject of fascination and disbelief for his entire career. Mayweather's financial pressure did not just come from his income, but also from his spending and investment structure, defined by private jets, a rotation of supercars, and high-end estates, which place a heavy burden on his liquid assets. The lifestyle that made Floyd famous is also the lifestyle that has pushed him to the brink. When you maintain a fleet of luxury vehicles, a private jet, multiple properties, a large entourage, and a gambling habit that involves 6- and 7-figure wagers, your monthly burn rate is staggering. Despite earning an estimated $1.1 billion to $1.4 billion throughout his decorated career, Mayweather's current financial situation has raised questions. That number, over $1 billion in career earnings, is almost incomprehensible, and the fact that someone who earned that much is now facing $7.3 million tax liens and $338,000 rent disputes is a testament to how quickly even the largest fortunes can erode when the income stops and the spending doesn't. The parallel to other athletes is obvious. Mike Tyson earned hundreds of millions and went bankrupt. Evander Holyfield earned over $300 million and lost his mansion to foreclosure. Allen Iverson earned over $200 million and was famously broke at one point. The pattern is depressingly consistent. Enormous earnings, inadequate financial planning, and a lifestyle that consumes capital faster than it can be replenished. The Netflix advance in this context was not a bonus. It was a lifeline. According to Boxing Scene's Lance Pugmire, Mayweather was paid millions of dollars in advance by Netflix for a pro fight before trying to turn it into an exhibition. Netflix has given Floyd Mayweather some financial advances, and we're talking millions of dollars. When Pugmire said the actual figure was even higher than the multiple millions he threw out, the implication was that we were talking about a truly significant sum. For a man facing a $7.3 million tax lien, a $900,000 loan default, $338,000 in unpaid rent, and millions in jewelry debts, an advance of that size from Netflix would have been enormously valuable. It would have provided immediate liquidity at a moment when liquidity was exactly what Floyd needed most. The temptation to sign would have been overwhelming, but the advance came with strings. It came with a contract that specified a professional fight. It came with obligations to show up, to be sanctioned, to put the 50-0 record on the line. And now that the advance had been cashed and the obligations loomed, Floyd was trying to find a way to keep the money while avoiding the risk. Pacquiao, sensing blood in the water, sharpened his rhetoric. The Filipino icon, who has experienced his own share of financial challenges, including a Senate career in the Philippines and the obligations that come with being a national hero, understood the leverage he held. Mayweather needed this fight. He needed the payday, and every day that passed without a resolution, the pressure on Floyd increased. Manny Pacquiao's own financial situation was fundamentally different from Mayweather's. While not immune to controversy, Pacquiao had continued to fight professionally, had maintained a public life as a politician, and had managed his post-career transition with a steadiness that contrasted sharply with Floyd's increasingly erratic financial behavior. Pacquiao did not need this fight to pay his rent. He wanted this fight to settle a score. And that asymmetry of motivation made the contract dispute especially painful for Floyd. Pacquiao was fighting for legacy. Floyd was fighting for survival. And the man who always held the negotiating advantage, the man who made opponents wait years for the privilege of sharing a ring with him, was now the one on the back foot, scrambling to maintain control of a situation that was rapidly slipping away. The question of whether Floyd's financial problems are genuine or exaggerated is one that different sources answer differently. Despite claims that Mayweather is having money problems, Mayweather's attorney told Business Insider that the boxer is not experiencing financial strain. That statement, from Floyd's own legal representative, directly contradicts the narrative that has been building in the media. But statements from attorneys are, by definition, advocacy. They are designed to protect the client, not to provide an objective accounting of the client's net worth. The circumstantial evidence, however, is substantial. Multiple lawsuits for unpaid bills, an IRS lien, a defamation suit against the publication that exposed his finances, a $340 million fraud claim against a former business partner, and a desperate attempt to renegotiate a professional fight into an exhibition that would carry less financial upside, but also less personal risk. Individually, any one of these could be dismissed as a normal complication of a high-profile life. Together, they paint a portrait of a man whose financial empire is under extraordinary stress. And into this portrait walks Floyd Mayweather Sr., a father who knows exactly how much his son has earned, how much he has spent, and how much he has lost. A father who has watched the money brand transform from a reflection of reality into a fiction that is becoming increasingly difficult to maintain. And a father who, in the bombshell moment that has the boxing world talking, decided that the fiction had gone on long enough. The intersection of Floyd's financial problems and the Netflix scandal creates a narrative that is almost Shakespearean in its construction. A king, once all-powerful, now besieged by creditors, betrayed by former allies, and forced to choose between his pride and his survival. The 50-0 record is the crown. The Netflix deal is the kingdom's treasury, and the battle is between the man's need to protect his image and the world's demand that he honor his commitments. Floyd's father recognized the tragedy of the situation before the rest of the world did. He had watched Floyd Jr. build the money persona from scratch. He had seen the first Mayweather fight purse, the first luxury car, the first million-dollar bet, and he had also seen the first IRS lien, the first unpaid bill, and the first sign that the empire was built on a foundation that could not sustain the weight being placed upon it. When Floyd Sr. spoke, he spoke with the authority of someone who had been there from the beginning, not as a business partner, not as a manager, but as a father. The one person who could look at Floyd Mayweather Jr. and see not the champion, not the brand, not the 50-0 record, but the boy from Grand Rapids who needed someone to tell him the truth. The financial story of Floyd Mayweather is, at its core, a story about the gap between earning and keeping. Despite earning over $1 billion in his career, he has recurring tax payment issues. $1 billion. It is a number so large that it borders on abstraction. And yet, here was a man who earned $1 billion and who now owed the IRS $7.3 million from tax returns that were 3 and 5 years old. The explanation is not complicated. Floyd spent at a rate that assumed the income would never stop, but the income did stop, at least at the level that could sustain his lifestyle. The exhibitions brought in money, but not enough to cover the burn rate. The investments, if there were any beyond real estate and luxury goods, apparently did not generate sufficient returns. And the people he trusted to manage his money either failed him, defrauded him, or some combination of both. The Netflix deal was supposed to change all of that. A professional fight against Pacquiao, streamed globally on the biggest platform in the world, with hundreds of millions of potential viewers. That was the kind of event that could reset everything. It could pay the IRS, it could settle the lawsuits, it could restore the money brand. All Floyd had to do was fight. And fighting, for the first time in his life, was something Floyd Mayweather was trying not to do. The advance payment from Netflix became the focal point of the financial narrative. When Pacquiao's camp confirmed that Floyd had received money up front for a professional fight, the dynamics of the dispute shifted dramatically. This was no longer a disagreement about the nature of a future contest. This was a case where one party had accepted payment and was now refusing to deliver the agreed-upon service. In business, that is called fraud. In boxing, it is called something else. But the effect is the same. And Netflix, a corporation with a market cap in the hundreds of billions, was not the kind of entity that would allow millions of dollars to walk away without consequences. The legal machinery that would be brought to bear on Mayweather, if the deal collapsed, would make his existing lawsuits look like parking tickets. Floyd's father understood this. Whatever else you might say about Floyd Sr., he is not stupid. He has spent a lifetime navigating the margins of legality and illegality, and he knows what happens when you take someone's money and fail to deliver. The streets taught him that lesson long before the courtrooms did. And when he saw his son heading toward what could be the most expensive mistake of his life, he decided to speak up. The broader boxing industry watched the financial unraveling with a mixture of sympathy and schadenfreude. For years, Floyd had positioned himself as the smartest man in the sport, the fighter who always got the biggest purse, the biggest share, the biggest everything. He mocked his opponents for making less money. He flaunted his wealth in their faces. He branded himself as the one fighter in history who had truly figured out the business of boxing. And now, the man who figured it all out was being sued by jewelers, defaulting on loans, fighting with the IRS, and trying to weasel out of a contract with the biggest entertainment company on the planet. The irony was impossible to miss, and the boxing community, which had endured decades of Floyd's financial peacocking, was not in a particularly forgiving mood. But beneath the schadenfreude, there was also a genuine concern about what this meant for the sport. If Floyd Mayweather, the highest-paid fighter in boxing history, could find himself in this kind of financial distress, what did that say about the sport's ability to protect its athletes' long-term interests? The answer was not encouraging. And Floyd's story, however unique in its scale, was depressingly ordinary in its trajectory. The IRS situation in particular illustrated the cyclical nature of Floyd's financial management. This was not the first time the boxer had faced significant scrutiny from the IRS. He was previously hit with a $22.5 million tax bill in 2015 and $7.2 million in 2010. Each time, the resolution was the same: schedule a fight, earn a massive purse, and use the proceeds to pay the government. The strategy worked until the fights stopped being massive. While those prior debts were eventually settled, the nature of these filings suggests ongoing problems in the 49-year-old's tax management. Tax management is a generous way to describe what appears to be a complete absence of proactive financial planning. There is no evidence that Mayweather ever established the kind of long-term financial infrastructure, trusts, retirement accounts, conservative investments, that financial advisors would recommend for an athlete earning the kind of money he earned. Instead, the money came in and the money went out, with the IRS getting whatever was left after the jets, the cars, the jewelry, the properties, and the entourage had been fed. And now, with the exhibitions producing diminishing returns and the professional fighting career long over, or at least it was supposed to be, the feeding had become more difficult. Floyd Mayweather's financial story is ultimately a story about what happens when the show stops, but the bills don't. The private jet requires fuel, maintenance, and hangar fees, whether Floyd is fighting or not. The luxury properties require taxes, insurance, and upkeep, whether the purses are flowing or not. The entourage expects to be paid. The lifestyle expects to be maintained. And the public expects Money Mayweather to live up to his name. The Netflix deal was supposed to be the answer. It was supposed to be the one big payday that would resolve everything. A blockbuster event that combined Floyd's name recognition with Netflix's global reach and the nostalgia of the Pacquiao rivalry. It was supposed to generate enough revenue to clear the debts, pay the taxes, and set Floyd up for whatever came next. But Floyd Mayweather, in a move that confounded everyone from his own family to the CEO of Netflix, decided that his 50-0 record was worth more than financial salvation. And that decision, a decision that prioritized a number on a sheet of paper over the material reality of his life, is what prompted his father to stand up and say what needed to be said. The word exhibition has become a loaded term in boxing. It used to mean a friendly, non-competitive display of skill, a charity event or a promotional appearance where two fighters would spar lightly for the entertainment of the audience. There were no judges, there was no official winner, there was no risk, and there was very little money, because exhibitions, by their nature, were not events that the paying public took seriously. Then Floyd Mayweather reinvented the exhibition. Starting with his bout against Logan Paul in June 2021, Mayweather began a series of exhibition fights that generated enormous pay-per-view numbers while carrying none of the professional risk. The opponents were carefully selected: YouTubers, reality TV stars, MMA fighters working out of their weight class. The fights were entertaining enough to sell tickets, but easy enough to ensure that Floyd's legacy was never genuinely threatened. For a time, the exhibition model worked brilliantly. Floyd was earning millions per fight, while doing a fraction of the work required for a professional bout. The training camps were shorter, the opponents were weaker, and the 50-0 record remained untouched, preserved in amber like a museum artifact. It was, by any objective measure, a genius business strategy. But the exhibition model had a shelf life, and by 2023, it had expired. At an exhibition against British reality show star and MMA veteran Aaron Chalmers in 2023, London's O2 Arena was described as a ghost town as the contest played out in a mostly empty arena, with thousands of unsold tickets and last-minute price reductions to 5 failing to tempt bargain hunters. The British public had voted with their wallets, and the verdict was unanimous. They were not going to pay real money for fake fights. The critical response was equally brutal. Mayweather was, in the words of the English press, a laughingstock. The man who had once sold out the MGM Grand for $72 million in gate revenue was now struggling to fill a mid-sized arena in London, even with tickets that cost less than a fast food meal. The contrast between the peak Floyd Mayweather and the exhibition Floyd Mayweather was stark, embarrassing, and impossible to spin. Mayweather blamed the British audience, suggesting that Americans were more willing to spend money on entertainment. But the real issue was not cultural, it was qualitative. The exhibitions had lost their novelty. The opponents were not credible. The stakes were non-existent, and the audience, which had once been willing to pay for the spectacle of Floyd Mayweather in the ring, was no longer willing to pay for the spectacle of Floyd Mayweather pretending to be in the ring. The Netflix deal, announced in February 2026, was supposed to be the antidote to the exhibition decline. Unlike the exhibitions, this was a professional fight. Unlike the exhibitions, the opponent was a legend. Unlike the exhibitions, there were genuine stakes. The 50W0 record, the Sphere venue, the global streaming audience, and the sheer historical significance of Mayweather and Pacquiao meeting one more time. Netflix's February announcement unveiled its latest spectacle, a follow-up to the best-selling boxing bout of all time, set to head for the Sphere in Las Vegas on September 19th. Available globally to the platform's 325 million subscribers. This was not an exhibition at the O2 Arena with 5-pack tickets. This was the real deal, and for a brief, shining moment, it seemed like Floyd Mayweather had finally made the decision that everyone had been waiting for, to put up or shut up. And then, barely a month later, he tried to turn it back into an exhibition. The whiplash was extraordinary. The decision-making was baffling, and the question that hung over the entire episode was the same question that Floyd Sr. would eventually address in his bombshell. What is Floyd so afraid of? The fear of losing the 50-0 record is a complex psychological phenomenon that goes beyond simple vanity. For Floyd Mayweather, the record is not just a statistic. It is the narrative architecture of his entire life story. He grew up with nothing. He was abandoned by his father. He dropped out of school. He fought his way to the top of the most brutal sport on earth, and he did it without losing a single time. That narrative, from nothing to perfection, is the foundation upon which every other aspect of his identity rests. If Pacquiao beats him, the narrative changes. It becomes from nothing to almost perfection, and almost is a word that Floyd Mayweather has spent his entire life rejecting. He did not become the highest-paid athlete in boxing history by accepting almost. He did not build the money brand by tolerating imperfection. And he is not about to let a 47-year-old Filipino senator take the one thing from him that money cannot buy back. The irony, of course, is that by trying to protect the record, Floyd is damaging something equally valuable: his reputation. The boxing world has always respected Floyd's skill, even when it disliked his personality. But the Netflix scandal has shifted the conversation from Floyd was boring but brilliant to Floyd was brilliant but cowardly. And that shift, once it takes hold in the public consciousness, may be irreversible. The exhibition history also provides context for why Pacquiao's team reacted so forcefully to Floyd's attempted downgrade. From Pacquiao's perspective, agreeing to an exhibition would be a capitulation, an acceptance that the fight does not matter, that the result will not count, and that the entire event is nothing more than a glorified sparring session between two aging men. Pacquiao has been fighting professionally his entire adult life. Hailing from the Philippines, he is the only 8-division world champion, earning 12 major world titles throughout his illustrious career. Pacquiao was also the first boxer to become a recognized 4-time welterweight champion, the only boxer to hold world championships in 4 different decades, and became the oldest welterweight world champion at age 40. This is not a man who participates in exhibitions. This is a man who fights for real. And Pacquiao had a very specific goal for this rematch. I want Floyd to live with the one loss on his professional record and always remember who gave it to him. The Filipino star said, Pacquiao wanted to beat Mayweather in a fight that counted. He wanted to put a mark on the 50-0 record that could never be erased, and an exhibition would deny him that opportunity entirely. No wonder his camp was furious. The exhibition versus professional fight debate also had massive financial implications. Exhibitions, by their nature, generate less revenue than professional bouts. They attract fewer sponsors, lower broadcasting fees, and smaller audiences. The Netflix model was built on the assumption of a professional fight. That was what the marketing was designed around. That was what the press releases promised. And that was what the advance payments were contingent upon. If the fight were downgraded to an exhibition, the entire financial model would collapse. Netflix would have to recalibrate its expectations. Sponsors would renegotiate or withdraw. The Sphere, which was being marketed as the host of a historic professional boxing event, would become the host of an overgrown sparring match. And the global audience, already sensitized to the diminishing quality of Mayweather's exhibitions, would almost certainly tune in smaller numbers. For Netflix, the financial calculus was straightforward. A professional Mayweather-Pacquiao fight had the potential to be the biggest live event in their history. An exhibition version of the same fight would be a fraction of that. As Jas Mathur put it, Netflix doesn't want to be involved in an exhibition. We don't want that to happen. Both sides of the deal, the platform and the promoter, were aligned. The only person who wanted an exhibition was the one person who stood to lose his perfect record if it was a real fight. The pattern of Floyd's exhibition career reveals something important about his psychology. In every exhibition, Floyd was in control. He chose the opponent. He dictated the terms. He set the rules. And because the fights did not count on his record, he fought with a relaxation and confidence that he could never afford in a professional bout. The exhibitions were, in essence, Floyd's version of retirement, a way to stay in the spotlight, earn a paycheck, and feed his addiction to attention without exposing himself to genuine risk. The Pacquiao deal disrupted that control. For the first time since 2017, someone was asking Floyd to put his record on the line against a legitimate opponent. And not just any opponent, the one man in boxing who had always given him problems. The one man who many believed actually won the first fight, or at least fought well enough to deserve a rematch under the same conditions. The one man who, at 47, was still professionally active and still capable of delivering a performance that could end Floyd's dream of permanent perfection. The anxiety that this must have caused Floyd is not difficult to imagine. For nearly a decade, he had existed in a bubble of zero-risk competition, and now the bubble was being popped. The contract was signed. The advance was collected, and the real fight was looming. Floyd's attempt to convert the fight into an exhibition can be seen as the final act of a man who has been running from risk for years. The Logan Paul fight was low risk. The Gotti Thride fight was low risk. The Chalmers fight was low risk. Each one allowed Floyd to maintain the illusion of being an active fighter while avoiding the reality of genuine competition. The exhibitions were not about boxing. They were about preservation. But preservation has its limits, and when the financial pressure became unbearable, when the IRS came knocking, when the jewelers filed suit, when the rent went unpaid, Floyd was forced to accept a deal that carried real risk. He took the money because he needed the money. And then, when the reality of what he had agreed to began to sink in, he panicked. The public comments about the fight being an exhibition were not a calculated negotiation tactic. They were a panic response. Floyd looked at the contract, looked at Pacquiao's recent form, looked at his own age and conditioning, and realized that he was in serious danger of losing. And losing was the one thing that Floyd Mayweather, the man who never lost, the man whose entire identity was built on never losing, could not accept. The deadline that Pacquiao's team imposed added a ticking clock to the drama. The deadline was set. Tomorrow, 14th, end of business day. It was a power play, designed to force Floyd's hand and prevent him from dragging out the ambiguity indefinitely. Either commit to the original terms or face the consequences. There was no middle ground. There was no wiggle room. And there was no more time for Floyd's verbal tap dancing. All I can say is we are making headway on it. There is a contract in place, and I think better sense will prevail here. Mather's tone was cautiously optimistic, but the underlying message was hard. The contract existed, the signatures were verified, and the law, unlike public opinion, was not susceptible to Floyd's charm. The question became, would better sense prevail? And if so, whose version of better sense would win? Floyd's desire to protect his record, or the collective insistence of Pacquiao, Netflix, and the legal system that a deal is a deal? Floyd, when he finally addressed the deadline publicly, offered a characteristically ambiguous response. Weeks after it was announced that Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao would meet in a professionally sanctioned rematch, Mayweather threw the plans into doubt. He has now provided an update following multiple deadlines from the other side. The update, true to form, was more style than substance, a performance designed to buy time without committing to anything concrete. If fans are to read into the comment, though they may see that pointless at this stage, Mayweather does seem to end on a positive note. But positive notes from Floyd Mayweather have historically been unreliable indicators of his actual intentions. He is a man who has mastered the art of saying everything and nothing simultaneously. And the boxing world, well versed in Floyd's verbal gymnastics, was taking the positive note with a massive grain of salt. Further updates from Pacquiao's team were expected soon, and if the will they won't they saga dragged on, perhaps Netflix would get involved too. And Netflix getting involved was the scenario that Floyd most wanted to avoid, because Netflix was not Pacquiao. Netflix was not a boxer with a grudge. Netflix was a multi-billion-dollar corporation with a legal department the size of a small army, and zero tolerance for partners who take their money and fail to deliver. The exhibition strategy was also undermined by the broader market for Floyd Mayweather events. The 50-0 record remains a stake worth fighting for, and it's arguably more meaningful to Mayweather than any belt. Remove that, and one removes the interest from September's quadragenarian rematch. Mayweather's exhibition run over the past several years had delivered only mixed results, at a time in which Netflix only wants surefire hits. Without the 50-0 record on the line, the fight lost its primary selling point. It became just another old-timer bout, two legends past their prime, going through the motions for a paycheck. The audience was smarter than Floyd gave them credit for. They could tell the difference between a professional fight with genuine stakes and an exhibition with manufactured drama. And they had already shown, with their wallets and their viewing habits, that they were not interested in the latter. The O2 debacle was proof. The declining pay-per-view numbers for recent exhibitions were proof. And the muted public reaction to Floyd's "it's an exhibition" comments was the most damning proof of all. The world wanted Mayweather-Pacquiao 2 to be real. The world wanted the 50-0 record on the line. The world wanted the chance to see if Pacquiao could do what no one else had ever done: hand Floyd Mayweather a professional loss. And the world through Pacquiao's team and Netflix, was not going to let Floyd deny them that chance without a fight. The exhibition era, in retrospect, may have done more damage to Floyd's legacy than any loss ever could. The fights against Paul, Gotti, and Chalmers were not remembered for their quality. They were remembered for their spectacle, their absurdity, and their increasingly obvious purposelessness. Each one diminished Floyd's standing a little more, chipping away at the aura of invincibility that had taken a career's worth of sacrifices to build. And the Netflix scandal was the logical endpoint of the exhibition strategy. When you spend years doing fights that don't matter, you eventually lose the ability to credibly commit to a fight that does. Floyd's attempt to downgrade the Pacquiao rematch was not a deviation from the exhibition pattern. It was the culmination of it. The exhibitions had trained Floyd to think of the ring as a stage, not a battlefield. And when the time came to treat it as a battlefield again, he could not make the transition. His father saw this more clearly than anyone. Floyd Sr. had spent his own career fighting for real, against real opponents, with real consequences. The exhibition world that his son had created would have been unrecognizable to the Floyd Sr. who stepped into the ring with Sugar Ray Leonard. And when Floyd Sr. saw his son trying to hide behind the exhibition label one more time, in the most important fight of his post-retirement life, the frustration boiled over. The broader boxing community's reaction to the exhibition controversy was uniformly negative. Retired fighters, active fighters, promoters, commentators, and fans all weighed in, and the consensus was clear. Floyd needed to honor the contract and fight. The exhibition escape route was not an option. The contracts said, professional fight. The advance was paid for a professional fight, and the only acceptable outcome was a professional fight. The intensity of the backlash caught Floyd off guard. He was accustomed to controlling narratives, managing perceptions, and shaping public opinion through his social media presence and his carefully curated media appearances. But this time, the narrative had escaped his control. The story was no longer Floyd Mayweather, undefeated legend, returns for one more battle. The story was Floyd Mayweather, scared and broke, tries to run from a fight he already signed for. That shift in narrative was, in many ways, more damaging than losing the fight itself. Because even if Floyd eventually agreed to the professional terms and fought Pacquiao, the image of him trying to escape would linger. The boxing world has a long memory, and the perception of cowardice is one of the hardest stains to remove. The timeline of events painted a picture of escalating desperation. February, Netflix announces the fight to global fanfare. March, Floyd publicly contradicts the announcement, calling it an exhibition. April, Pacquiao's camp reveals the advance payments and threatens legal action. The IRS files a $7.3 million lien. Business Insider reports on Floyd's financial leveraging, and Floyd's father breaks his silence with a bombshell that makes everything else seem like a warm-up act. Each week brought a new revelation that peeled back another layer of the carefully constructed Mayweather facade. The man who showed the world suitcases full of cash was fighting over unpaid rent. The man who bragged about billion-dollar earnings was defaulting on $900,000 loans. The man who called himself money was, by all available evidence, running out of it. And the exhibition strategy, which had been Floyd's comfort zone for years, was no longer available. Pacquiao's team had closed that door. Netflix had locked it, and the legal system was standing guard to make sure nobody opened it again. What made Floyd's situation especially poignant was the contrast with Pacquiao's trajectory. Pacquiao had remained active as a professional boxer, fighting 8 more matches in the intervening 10 years. He most recently fought to a majority draw against Mario Barrios in July 2025. While Floyd was fighting YouTubers and reality stars, Pacquiao was fighting ranked professional boxers. While Floyd was protecting his record, Pacquiao was risking his. Outside the ring, the now 47-year-old Pacquiao's global impact ranges from politics as a former senator of the Philippines to music as a renowned singer and songwriter. Pacquiao had built a life after boxing that was rich, meaningful, and diverse. He had served his country in government. He had pursued his passion for music. He had remained connected to his community in ways that went far beyond sports. Floyd, by contrast, had spent his retirement years doing exhibitions, posting Instagram stories of his lavish lifestyle, and accumulating the kind of financial baggage that would eventually lead to the Netflix scandal. The contrast was not flattering, and it gave Pacquiao a moral authority in the dispute that no amount of Floyd's bravado could match. The exhibition label, in the end, was more than a contractual technicality. It was a symbol of everything that had gone wrong in Floyd Mayweather's post-retirement life. The exhibitions represented avoidance of risk, of accountability, of the hard truths that come with aging in a sport that punishes denial. By trying to turn the Pacquiao fight into yet another exhibition, Floyd was trying to avoid the one thing he had spent his entire life doing: fighting for real. And his father, watching from the sidelines with the peculiar mix of love and disappointment that defines the Mayweather family dynamic, could not stand it any longer. Floyd Sr. had tolerated the exhibitions. He had tolerated the declining quality of opponents. He had tolerated the financial extravagance. But the attempt to dodge a signed contract for a real fight against the one opponent who mattered most, that was a bridge too far. The bombshell was coming, and when it dropped, it would land with all the force of a father's disappointment, a fighter's judgment, and a family legacy on the brink of redefinition. The weeks between Mayweather's exhibition comments and his father's public response were filled with speculation, rumor, and legal maneuvering. Behind closed doors, attorneys were exchanging letters. Pacquiao's team was preparing for the possibility of litigation. Netflix was reportedly consulting with its own legal department about the advance payments and the breach of contract. And Floyd, for once, was quiet. The silence from Floyd was unusual. This is a man who typically responds to every slight, every insult, every challenge, with a social media post or a press conference. But in the weeks following his exhibition comments, Floyd went dark. No Instagram videos of cash, no boastful tweets about his record, no public appearances. The absence was conspicuous, and it suggested that even Floyd understood the severity of the situation he had created. And then, breaking the silence, not Floyd himself, but Floyd Sr., the father, not the son, the man who started it all, stepping forward one more time to say something about the legacy he helped create and the son he never fully understood. Floyd Mayweather Sr. speaking about his son's Netflix situation was not a surprise in terms of the fact that it happened. Floyd Sr. has never been the kind of father who stays silent when there is a camera in front of him. He has opinions about everything: his son's opponents, his son's trainers, his son's lifestyle, his son's women. There is no topic too personal and no moment too sensitive for Floyd Sr. to offer his unfiltered, unscripted, and often uncomfortable take. But the content of what he said, that was the surprise. Because Floyd Sr. did not do what he usually does. He did not hype his son up. He did not declare that Floyd Jr. could beat Pacquiao with one hand tied behind his back. He did not dismiss the controversy as haters and jealousy. Instead, Floyd Sr. did something that the boxing world had almost never seen him do. He acknowledged that his son was in trouble, and he implied that Floyd Jr. had brought it upon himself. The comments landed like a body shot, the kind that does not look devastating on the surface, but that resonates deep inside, sapping the will and the strength long after the initial impact. For Floyd Jr., hearing his own father, the man who taught him to fight, the man whose approval he had chased for decades, the man whose absence defined his childhood, hearing that man publicly acknowledge his failures was a different kind of pain. Not a physical pain, not a financial pain. Something deeper. The specifics of Floyd Sr.'s comments centered on two themes: the contract and the fear. On the contract, Floyd Sr. was blunt. In his view, if his son signed for a professional fight, his son should fight professionally. There was no ambiguity in Floyd Sr.'s position. Contracts are not suggestions. Signatures are not decorations. When you put your name on a piece of paper and take someone's money, you honor the agreement. Full stop. This position was consistent with Floyd Sr.'s generational values. In his era, a fighter's word was his bond. You agreed to fight, you trained, and you showed up. Full stop. The idea of signing a contract and then trying to renegotiate the fundamental nature of the fight after the fact would have been inconceivable. Fighters of Floyd Sr.'s generation took pride in facing the best, not in avoiding them. And for Floyd Sr. to see his own son, the greatest defensive fighter in the history of the sport. Trying to avoid a fight was deeply offensive to everything he believed about boxing. On the fear, Floyd Sr. was equally direct. He addressed the elephant in the room, the 50-0 record, with the kind of candor that only a father can deliver. Floyd Sr. acknowledged that the record was important. He understood why his son valued it. But he also made clear that protecting a number at the expense of your integrity, your contracts, and your family name was not an acceptable trade-off. The record, in Floyd Sr.'s view, was supposed to be a badge of courage. It was supposed to represent 50 fights against the best in the world. It was not supposed to be a shield that you hide behind when the moment calls for bravery. The reaction to Floyd Sr.'s comments was immediate and polarized. On one side, there were those who praised the elder Mayweather for his honesty. They argued that Floyd Jr. needed to hear the truth, and that his father was the only person with the credibility and the courage to deliver it. In a world where everyone around Floyd Jr. was either too afraid or too financially dependent to challenge him, Floyd Sr.'s willingness to speak up was refreshing and necessary. On the other side, there were those who viewed Floyd Sr.'s comments as a betrayal. They pointed to the troubled history between father and son, and suggested that Floyd Sr.'s motivation was not concern, but resentment, a desire to undermine his son at a vulnerable moment, just as he had done decades earlier when he trained Oscar de la Hoya to fight his own child. In this reading, Floyd Sr. was not being honest. He was being vindictive. The truth, as with most things involving the Mayweather family, resisted simple classification. Floyd Sr. was probably being both honest and vindictive. He was probably motivated by genuine concern and by the desire for attention. He probably loved his son and resented his son in equal measure. The human heart is not a contract. It does not come with neatly defined terms and conditions, and the relationship between Floyd Sr. and Floyd Jr. has always been the kind of complicated that defies easy analysis. The implications of the bombshell extended beyond the family drama. By publicly challenging his son to honor the contract, Floyd Sr. added moral weight to the positions already taken by Pacquiao's camp and Netflix. It was no longer just business partners and legal teams demanding that Floyd fight. It was his own father, and in the court of public opinion. A father's voice carries an authority that no lawyer or corporate statement can match. For Pacquiao, the comments were a gift. Everything Pacquiao's team had been saying for weeks. That Floyd signed the contract, took the money, and was now trying to run, was now being confirmed by a member of Floyd's own family. It was the ultimate validation, and it gave Pacquiao the narrative high ground in a way that no legal filing could have achieved. For Netflix, the comments were equally useful. The streaming giant had been navigating the situation carefully, avoiding public statements that could antagonize Mayweather while privately preparing for the possibility of litigation. Floyd Sr.'s intervention gave Netflix additional ammunition and public cover. If Floyd's own father thought he should honor the deal, the moral case for holding Floyd to his contractual obligations became virtually unassailable. Floyd Jr.'s response to his father's comments was, characteristically, indirect. He did not issue a formal statement. He did not hold a press conference. He did not post a lengthy Instagram response. Instead, he did what he has always done when confronted with uncomfortable truths. He deflected. He posted a video of himself on a private jet. He shared a photo of a new watch. He projected the image of a man who was too rich, too powerful, and too successful to be bothered by his father's opinions. But the deflection was transparent. Everyone could see it for what it was. A defense mechanism, not a rebuttal. The boxing community was not fooled. The media was not fooled. And Floyd Sr., who has known his son longer than anyone, was certainly not fooled. The jets and the watches were the armor. Beneath them was a man who was hurt, embarrassed, and uncertain about what to do next. The silence from Floyd Jr., the real silence, beneath the noise of the social media posts, spoke volumes. He was not engaging with his father's comments because he could not. There was no effective response to a father calling out his son's cowardice in front of the entire world. You cannot argue with it. You cannot spin it. You can only absorb it and decide what to do next. The bombshell also raised questions about Floyd Jr.'s inner circle. If his own father felt compelled to speak publicly because he could not get through to Floyd privately, What did that say about the people who were supposed to be advising him? Mayweather had already divorced from his career-long confidant, Leonard Ellerbe, was suing his former broadcaster Showtime Sports, and had name-checked business partner Al Heyman for allegedly engaging in a fraudulent scheme. It was unclear who in his inner circle remained from the core who helped him achieve all he did in the sport. The absence of trusted advisors was, in many ways, the root cause of the entire Netflix scandal. A competent advisor would have told Floyd not to publicly contradict the Netflix announcement. A competent advisor would have negotiated the exhibition terms privately, before any contracts were signed. A competent advisor would have managed the financial situation so that Floyd was not in a position where he needed to take advance payments for fights he was not sure he wanted to take. But Floyd had systematically removed or alienated everyone who might have played that role. And in their absence, the only advisor left was a father whose counsel came wrapped in public criticism and delivered through a camera lens. It was not ideal, but it was, perhaps, the only form of counsel that Floyd had left. The broader narrative arc of the story, from the Netflix announcement to the breach of contract to the financial revelations to the bombshell, traces the outline of a man in crisis. Floyd Mayweather Jr. is not a man who experiences crises quietly. Everything in his life has always been big. The purses, the entourage, the spending, the ego, and now, the problems. The Netflix scandal is the biggest problem Floyd has faced since he retired from professional boxing, and it is testing every aspect of his character, his relationships, and his financial resilience. The bombshell from Floyd Sr. is not the end of the story. It is a turning point, a moment that forces Floyd Jr. to confront the reality of his situation in a way that no legal filing or media report could. Because the legal filings and the media reports can be dismissed, sued, or ignored. But a father's disappointment cannot be filed away. It lives in the silence between phone calls, in the awkwardness of family gatherings, and in the knowledge that the one person who has the least reason to lie to you has just told you the truth you did not want to hear. Whether Floyd Jr. will honor the contract, fight Pacquiao professionally, and put the 50-0 record on the line remains an open question. But the bombshell has shifted the calculus. It has added a dimension to the decision that transcends money, contracts, and legal obligations. It has made the decision about something more fundamental: who Floyd Mayweather Jr. is, and whether the man matches the legend. The possibility that the fight still happens as a professional bout is not dead. If fans are to read into Mayweather's latest comments, he does seem to end on a positive note. There are indications that behind-the-scenes negotiations are continuing, and that the financial and legal pressure combined, perhaps, with the emotional pressure from his father's comments, may be steering Floyd back toward the original terms. All I can say is, we are making headway on it. There is a contract in place, and I think better sense will prevail here, Mather said. The use of better sense was deliberate. It was a way of saying, we know Floyd is not thinking clearly, but we believe he will eventually come to his senses. And the reason he will come to his senses is because the alternative, breach of contract, potential litigation, financial ruin, is worse than losing a fight. The math is simple. If Floyd fights professionally and loses, he goes to 50-1. He loses the perfect record, but he gets paid. He settles his debts. He moves on. If Floyd refuses to fight and breaches the contract, he keeps the 50-0 record, but faces potential legal action from Netflix and Pacquiao's camp that could cost him everything he has left. The legacy question, ultimately, is the one that Floyd Sr. was really addressing. Records are numbers. They live on paper and in databases. But legacy is something different. Legacy is what people say about you when you're not in the room. It is the story that survives the statistics. And Floyd Sr., as a man nearing the end of his own life story, was telling his son that the way this chapter ends will define how the entire book is remembered. If Floyd fights Pacquiao professionally and wins, he retires as the greatest defensive fighter in boxing history, a man who came back at 49 and won. If he fights and loses, he retires as a man who had the courage to try, even at great personal risk. Either outcome preserves his legacy as a warrior. But if Floyd ducks the fight, if he takes the money, converts it to an exhibition, or pulls out entirely, he retires as a man who ran, And that is the one legacy that Floyd Mayweather Sr. could not accept for his family name. The bombshell was not just a father's disappointment, it was a father's plea. Don't let this be how the story ends. The Pacquiao factor adds another layer of urgency to the resolution. Pacquiao remains one of the most accomplished fighters in boxing history. Hailing from the Philippines, he is the only 8-division world champion, earning 12 major world titles. He was also the first boxer to become a recognized 4-time welterweight champion, the only boxer to hold world championships in 4 different decades, and became the oldest welterweight world champion at age 40. These are not the credentials of a man who will accept an exhibition. These are the credentials of a man who has earned the right to demand a real fight. And Pacquiao's motivation is pure in a way that Floyd's is not. Pacquiao does not need this fight for money. He does not need it for relevance. He needs it for one thing: to put a loss on Floyd Mayweather's record. That singular focus makes Pacquiao a more dangerous opponent, a more determined negotiator, and a more compelling figure in the public narrative. The contrast between the two fighters' motivations, Pacquiao fighting for pride, Floyd fighting for survival, is one of the most compelling dynamics in recent boxing history. And it is a dynamic that Floyd Sr.'s bombshell brought into sharp relief, stripping away the bravado and revealing the raw human stakes beneath. The Netflix angle is also worth examining in the context of the bombshell. Netflix is not a traditional boxing promoter. It is a global entertainment company that has redefined how content is consumed. Its entry into live sports, and into boxing specifically, has disrupted the traditional pay-per-view model and created new economic realities for fighters, promoters, and fans. Jake Paul vs. Mike Tyson in 2024 drew 108 million live global viewers, becoming the most streamed sporting event in history. That number is not just impressive, it is transformative. It demonstrates that Netflix has the infrastructure, the audience, and the ambition to be the dominant force in live combat sports. And the Mayweather-Pacquiao rematch was supposed to be the next step in that domination. If the fight falls apart because of Floyd's contractual games, Netflix will not simply shrug and move on. They will pursue every legal avenue available to them. They will seek damages. They will make an example, because allowing a fighter to take advance money and then renege on the deal would set a precedent that could undermine Netflix's entire sports division. The stakes for Netflix extend far beyond this one fight. Floyd Mayweather Sr.'s bombshell, viewed in this broader context, was not just a family matter. It was a statement about accountability, about honor, and about the obligations that come with being at the top of a sport that demands everything from those who participate in it. Floyd Sr. was speaking not just as a father, but as a boxing man. A man who lived the sport, bled for the sport, and who understood that the sport's code of honor is not negotiable. The code is simple. If you sign, you fight. If you take money, you earn it. If you give your word, you keep it. These are not radical principles. They are the foundation of professional boxing. And Floyd Jr., by attempting to circumvent them, was not just disrespecting his business partners. He was disrespecting the sport that gave him everything. Floyd Sr. saw this disrespect, and he called it out. He did not call it out gently, or privately, or diplomatically. He called it out in the way that Floyd Sr. has always operated, loudly, publicly, and without apology. And the boxing world, for once, was united in agreement with the elder Mayweather. As the story continues to unfold, several outcomes remain possible. The most likely scenario, based on the legal and financial pressure, is that Floyd eventually agrees to the original professional terms, and the fight happens as planned in September 2026 at the Sphere. The contracts are binding, the advance has been paid, and the alternative, litigation against Netflix and Pacquiao's camp, would be financially catastrophic. For a man who is already fighting on multiple legal fronts, a less likely but still possible scenario is that the fight collapses entirely. Floyd refuses to honor the terms. The parties enter litigation, and the September date is scrapped. This outcome would be terrible for everyone. For Floyd, who would face massive legal exposure. For Pacquiao, who would lose the rematch he has waited a decade for. And for Netflix, which would lose one of its marquee events of 2026. The third scenario, that the fight happens as an exhibition, appears to be off the table. Pacquiao's team has rejected it. Netflix has rejected it. And now, Floyd's own father has rejected it. The exhibition escape route is closed. The only way forward is through. Floyd Mayweather Jr. stands at a crossroads that will define the final chapter of his boxing story. On one side is the path of courage, honoring the contract, fighting Pacquiao professionally, and accepting whatever outcome the ring delivers. That path carries risk. The 50-0 record might end, but it also carries the possibility of something greater, a victory at 49. That would cement Floyd's legend forever, or a loss that would be understood by anyone who has ever watched a great champion age. On the other side is the path of avoidance, litigation, renegotiation, delay, and the slow erosion of everything Floyd has built over 3 decades in the public eye. That path preserves the number, but destroys the narrative. It protects the record, but sacrifices the reputation. And it confirms, once and for all, the worst version of the story that Floyd's critics have always wanted to tell about him. Floyd Sr., with his bombshell, told his son which path he should take. He told him to fight. He told him to honor his word. He told him to be the man that the Mayweather name demands. Whether Floyd Jr. will listen to his father, a father he has spent a lifetime both loving and resenting, remains the final, unanswered question in this extraordinary saga. The bombshell was not an act of destruction. It was, in its own rough and public way, an act of love. Floyd Sr. did not speak because he wanted to hurt his son. He spoke because he saw his son heading toward a cliff and decided that the risk of embarrassment was less important than the risk of catastrophe. He spoke because, for all the dysfunction and the distance and the decades of missed moments, he is still Floyd's father. And fathers, even the imperfect ones, especially the imperfect ones, sometimes say the hard things because no one else will. The boxing world will remember this chapter of the Mayweather story for a long time. The Netflix scandal, the breach of contract, the IRS, the lawsuits, the exhibitions, and the father who, at the most critical moment, said what everybody was thinking, but only he had the right to say. Whether the fight happens, whether the record falls, and whether father and son ever reconcile the latest wound in their complicated relationship are questions that only time can answer. But one thing is already clear: Floyd Mayweather Sr., at an age when most men are content to sit quietly and watch the world pass by, proved that the Mayweather instinct for fighting, for speaking truth, for refusing to flinch, for stepping into the ring, even when the consequences are uncertain, runs deeper than any number on any record could ever capture. The September 19th date is still on the calendar. The Sphere is still standing in the heart of Las Vegas, waiting for its first boxing event. Netflix still has the contracts. Pacquiao is still training, and Floyd Mayweather Jr. is still deciding whether to be the man his father raised him to be. The story is not over. In many ways, it is just beginning. The announcement was the first act. The scandal was the second. The bombshell was the third. And the fourth act, the fight itself, or the fight to avoid the fight, will play out over the coming months in courtrooms, training camps, and the court of public opinion. Whatever happens next, the image that will linger longest is this: a father standing in front of a camera, telling the whole world that his son needs to do the right thing. Not because it is easy, not because it is safe, but because it is right. And in a sport built on courage, in a family forged in fire, and in a story that has always been about the distance between who Floyd Mayweather Jr. is and who he was supposed to be, that image is worth more than any undefeated record could ever be.